What does $250,000, a pair of shoes, and the New Year's Eve balls drop all have to do with one another? Well, in today's video, I am going to show you how trust is built in relationships and sustained, and the 3 ways in which companies normally end up, 2 of which are awful and you don't want to do, totally want to avoid, and the 3rd one is the one that we're actually searching for. So join me today for this presentation as I show you those 3 stages. If you are a takes action sort and you're ready to actually get that 3rd scenario, the one that's the best, download the PDF guide below with the 5 questions that any service-based business can ask their clients to stand out and sell more, because it will help you in order to make sure you're actually getting this best result. So let's look at the whole process of building trust in relationships. What we're looking at here is a chart. Right here, we're measuring trust and goodwill. And right down here, we're measuring time. This is essentially the length of our client journey. So what we want to look at is, what does this relationship look like as we look at the different stages of growth? Well, let's say before the point of sale, we have our marketing and sales activities. And not everybody starts out with 0 trust, right? We usually have some element at which we trust people naturally, or we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. So trust doesn't start at 0. It starts somewhere up here. But over time, it needs to grow in order to hit this sort of threshold where somebody is willing to purchase your goods or services. Right? It's not always a smooth road. You know, there's bumps along the way, but somebody goes out, they find your content, they hear a recommendation from somebody. Maybe you have a deal, and so that makes them feel better. They're getting status out of getting a good deal, or they just don't have to have as high of a threshold in order to purchase something from you. So there is along here just this is the threshold at which somebody is willing to make that purchase decision. Once they've hit it, here, they're actually willing to get into business with you. So you've been doing a little bit of the value exchange the entire way. Maybe you're offering free content, or you're doing a free consult in there. I know that in my past relationships in the financial world, these could take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years to cultivate this relationship, finally identify an opportunity where we could actually work together, and then get it started. Now here's what would happen next. My background, being a client relationship manager and head of client service for years, is that after this point, there's so much money lost by businesses because a couple different scenarios happen, and that's what I promised we would talk about today. So we're setting aside marketing and sales for the moment, even though you need marketing and sales in order to run your business. We need to get the revenue in, but once it's in, here's what typically happens. The first one I like to call death by 1,000 paper cuts. And yes, it's as bad as it sounds. That's where somebody comes in and they start out well, but then over time, you know, there's just like little dings along the way, all the way around. Let me mark off some spots, right? Maybe here it's a key person left. Here it's, something got misreported, which in normal circumstances, somebody would be fine, but let's say it got misreported a couple times. So somebody's no longer trusting the things that you're telling them, or your team is no longer telling them. If you ever hear this happens with bigger companies, but maybe you had some reputation risk. Maybe they heard bad things about you in the press or from other customers. They're starting to have doubts. But down here, after all of these paper cuts along the way, they've had enough. Now, depending upon the size of your business, if you're a smaller business, you might know every little ding that happens along the way, have control. But as your business grows, certainly once you get up into corporate size, these things are happening in different departments, and it can be hard to spot the pattern. We have to have ways of looking at this and assessing it in our client journey to make sure that we're not having these little paper cuts the entire way through the journey, because what will happen is, surprise, and you've lost that client relationship without actually realizing it was ever at risk. And when we have long-term revenue streams that we're looking for, that can be a huge problem to your bottom line. It also means that they're not recommending you or referring you along the way. So having seen this happen with a client who had exactly that, somebody leaves, there's misreporting, there's reputation risk, and then suddenly it's something very, very simple, and they're gone, and they say goodbye. Now, there's another one that actually happens, and this can happen on both sides of the equation. People who have this kind of emotional purchase, which human beings do buy on emotion, but what happens if that emotion isn't backed up with substance? Because what we do is we buy on emotion, but we justify with logic. So if the 2 aren't happening after the point of sale, it can cause a lot of problems. Here's how that pattern looks. It doesn't look good, does it? Just with a quick or quick to fire folk. But what that means is that initial kick, you might actually get a referral or repeat business. Probably not repeat business maybe right away. Actually though, if you are set up with a certain structure, you might be able to upsell somebody immediately after that initial purchase because they're on that emotional high. And so they'll go to that next level with you, or they might recommend you to somebody else because they're so excited about the purchase and they're kind of in that evangelist mode. But if it's not backed up with substance, if the service isn't great on the other side of things, that dies away. It doesn't stay without sustaining it. What we end up seeing happen is somebody who doesn't get the right service, who feels neglected, whose emotional state is overwhelmed now by the logic of disappointment. They're usually quick to fire or quick to check out. So if you have those clients who they were so excited, so on board with your service, they might have made an overly emotional decision and the logic isn't backing it up, or they're looking for you to emotionally sustain their decision with more awesome service and more reasons for them to re-engage with you the entire time. You have to keep selling them throughout the process. Now here's where the ideal scenario is. It's number 3, and this is what we should all be aiming for. And that's what this download is all about, is making sure that you actually stay in this mode. So ideally, it looks like this. In the ideal world, not only do you get that first bump up, maybe the upgrade or somebody evangelizing your product or service, but then over time you get more of it, another referral. Maybe it's repeat business. Maybe it's something else along the way that takes the goodwill higher and higher. And I should have the chart go really tall on this because that threshold, if it's maintained at every level, means that it's easy for them to be happy with your service. It's easy for them to trust you enough to repeat business. This is the ideal scenario that you want. But what we have to remember is it doesn't all happen here. It happens after the point of purchase. Let me walk you some examples of each of these, because beginning I talked about what $250,000, pair of shoes, and ball dropping all have to do with in common. So that $250,000, that was something where somebody came in and almost immediately had their first ding. It was an error, mistyped something, and they lost $250,000 right off the bat. We had to reimburse them for that. But the trust that we lost was so much greater. And then over time, little dings throughout the relationship until finally they left, they'd had enough. The quick to hire, quick to fire, I've seen this too, where somebody was so excited, they were on board, and just days, and actually the ding happened here already, before they actually were fully onboarded, they lost a key person, and that went downhill. Now, my pair of shoes story, that was me. I wanted it, I ordered it, and it came in, it was beautiful, but it didn't fit. And so the customer service was at first, I was all evangelize it. So all the experience of having to get a new pair to fit. Well, the pair that I got in return didn't actually arrive. It never showed up on my doorstep. And when I called to say I had missed the package, they accused me of either stealing or they wanted me to canvass my neighborhood. I live in an urban environment. I have about 1,000 neighbors on my block. They finally made me sign an affidavit. In the meantime, I have this other pair of shoes sitting there waiting to go. And I'm like, I don't even want the pair of shoes anymore because you're making me feel like you don't trust me. So how can I trust you if you don't trust me? So my trust went off the map. Now it's funny because every time somebody asks me about the pair of shoes, they're somewhat distinctive looking, I end up telling this story instead of being like, yeah, I love it. It was so great. I love the customer service. Everything that I was willing to do at the beginning and I wasn't willing to do once that trust had gone off and they didn't follow through logically or emotionally with the decision that I had made and the feelings that I had. But what we see here, when we don't drop the ball, or when the dropping the ball is only a celebratory situation, and we know that dropping the ball is gonna happen, we can plan for it and we can actually sustain this client relationship to higher and higher levels over time. So that's what we wanna be doing, is going towards these higher levels. Now, I know that this is a lot to take in, but as you look at your client journey, remember, know, like, trust is certainly very important within the marketing and the sales component of what we offer to our clients. But after the purchase point is just as critical, because what we really want is to keep growing those relationships, and we have to do it not just in the moments after the sale, but over the long term. That's what builds a sustainable business. Otherwise, you end up with death by 1,000 paper cuts or the quick to hire, quick to fire. Don't go that way. Go the way of that long-term, sustainable, high-trust business, and you're gonna have a great future ahead of you. Thank you for joining me here today. Don't forget, you can grab a copy of the 5 questions every service-based business can ask their clients to stand out and sell more. Grab that in the link in the description below. Also, if you've gotten value out of this video today, please like it, subscribe for more, and leave me a comment below. And let me know what you thought of it, or if you have any questions you'd like me to cover in future videos. Thanks.